Hello, Dr. Crossan. My name is Chris Fagala. The following video is for class PS636 and is titled Syria. On August 21st, 2013, a chemical attack was brought upon civilians just outside the Syrian capital of Damascus that murdered an estimated 1,400 men, women, and children. Those behind the attack have not yet been found guilty of such inhumane treatment, but the United States and numerous other countries around the world have reason to believe the ones guilty of the attack is the government ran by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. President Assad has since denied that he was behind the chemical weapons attack on the Syrian people and said evidence was not conclusive and that there had been such an attack. The United States' decision to deter Syria has had a profound effect on people all over the world. Questions people ask themselves are, should we intervene in the civil war that has already taken the lives of over 100,000 people? An extended deterrence from Syria's main ally, Russia, wanted an investigation into the attack to be sure. Assad was in fact guilty before the United States jumped the gun and made matters worse. Intelligence the United States received proved that Assad was guilty, but Russia didn't believe that U.S. intelligence is being credible since U.S. intelligence was wrong before about unnecessarily invading Iraq in 2003 for having weapons of mass destruction. Secretary of State John Kerry said, if you want to send Iran, Hezbollah, and Assad a congratulatory message, you guys can do what you want. You'd say, don't do anything. We believe that this is dangerous and we will face this down the road in some more significant way if we are not prepared to take the stand now. The chemical attack in Damascus was not the first such incident to occur from chemical weapons. The Kurdish community in Iraq, perhaps the best known victim of Saddam's Iraq culture of violence between 1975 and the establishment of Kurdish self-governing zone in 1991, some 500,000 Kurds were murdered and 4,500 villages destroyed. In 1 year period alone between 1987 and 1988, 180,000 Kurds were killed and 1,700 villages leveled. In 1988, the regime of Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons on numerous Kurdish towns and villages, including Halabja, where 5,000 people died in a matter of hours. The dictator Saddam Hussein was found guilty of these crimes and sentenced to death. Saddam hung for these crimes in 2006. The consequences that could happen to millions of people living in the United States and other countries around the world if this atrocious act were left to go unpunished would mean other chemical attacks like it would happen in the near future. But taking a stance later rather than now could even mean your life would very well be in jeopardy. Unless President Bashar al-Assad doesn't remove the enormous stockpiles of chemical weapons as ordered by President Barack Obama, the United States will stick to their words with military airstrikes to remove them for him. It is now Syria's move before being put into check. The time is now to change the policy and procedures pertaining to punishment given to countries for the illegal use and acquiring of weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons. In order to do this, I highly suggest a couple ways in the following few paragraphs in which it will lead to the immediate end to this extremely dangerous activity. By restructuring the current policies and procedures that are being followed that gives the criminal countries their so-called punishment. I have a way that will give Syria and any country an actual punishment that is needed to prevent this situation from ever happening again. By doing so, it means a much safer world for all of us. Too often has a country gotten away with a crime that should not have ever happened in the first place. Too often has a country been punished and yet still ends up making a weapon of mass destruction. And too little has been done to prevent these horrible inventions from falling in the wrong hands. Diplomacy and sanctions thus far throughout history has failed numerous times. North Korea with their ongoing nuclear program dating back to 1959, Iraq's use of chemical weapons that have killed 5,000 people in 1988, Pakistan and India becoming nuclear states in 1998, and for Syria and their use of chemical weapons that the U.S. says 1,429 people were killed, including more than 400 children. All combined are clear examples on why I think sanctions in both past and present have failed. This brings me to my first change of policy, and that is getting rid of gradual increase of sanctions when a country commits a serious crime against humanity. A gradual increase would mean that they would have to stop part of their illegal activity, but not all of it, since they can get by with what little punishment given to them. If you want country A to immediately stop their illegal activity, countries B through Z would need to make that punishment be felt. An example of a frog in boiling water comes to mind with this new policy. The frog will jump out immediately if put into boiling water, but if the temperature of the water is gradually increased, then the frog will continue to stay in the pan. Likewise, if a country has sanctions so boiling hot that it is felt throughout the entire country, and that country will jump out of the pan and halt their illegal activity altogether. No frogs are harmed in the making of this paper, by the way, video. The kind of sanctions that I believe will prevent such heinous crimes against humanity today, tomorrow, and into the future would be to immediately impose a trade embargo of all aid, money, and items going in and out of this criminal country. By imposing this very strict trade embargo, purchased items that are in need in the country will not be accessible until they follow through with turning over all weapons of mass destruction, including parts that could be used to make weapons of mass destruction or chemical weapons. Sanctions that have worked in the past and are still in place in the United States sanctions against Cuba for the Cuban Asset Control Regulations, 31 CFR Part 515, the regulations, were issued by the U.S. government on July 8, 1963, under the Trading with the Enemy Act. In response to certain hostile actions by the Cuban government, this all-out embargo with Cuba has been in place for over 50 years, and economic hardship has made Cuba lose an estimated $1.1 trillion. Aid going in and out of this country is as strict as it needs to be to make it known throughout the world. The United States doesn't mess around with criminal activity. The embargo continues even after an October 29, 2013 vote that recorded 188 countries condemning the 5-decade-old U.S. embargo against communist Cuba and an annual UN General Assembly vote that signaled hardening opposition to U.S. sanctions. Depending on how equipped a country is with its own natural resources, a country that breaks the law may very well need longer than a year of punishment from more than one country for it to work, or the criminal activity could continue. Another country that is currently under heavy sanctions is Iran, put in place by the United States and the European Union. It is believed that last year's sanction alone cost Iran's economy around $100 billion, or nearly a quarter of its output. As of November 14, 2013, the United States is looking to ease sanctions on Iran, which may earn them an estimated $20 to $40 billion back per year. I strongly disagree with this strategy. If this happens, it can give Iran exactly what it needs and the funds it needs to once again be on the prowl for nuclear weapons and bring a disturbance in the international community. Multilateral sanctions and not just unilateral sanctions needs to be done. More countries need to step up and take action, not just stay back and see what the United States will do to fix a problem. Other countries need to induce sanctions of their own towards a country that has broken the law. Multilateral sanctions would further increase the amount of product that could be shipped to this country via a partner country. And if a sanctioned country asks an ally for help due to a lack of product, then that country that tries to help the sanctioned country will also receive sanctions. President Obama and all member state leaders need to step up and show the world that when a law goes into effect, it must be followed or risk being put into that pan of boiling water I mentioned earlier. The Convention of Prohibition of Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Biological and Toxic Weapons and on their destruction was simultaneously opened for signature in Moscow, Washington, and London on October 10, 1972, and entered into force on March 26, 1975. The convention bans the development, production, stockpiling, acquisition, and retention of microbial and other biological agents or toxins in types and quantities that have no justification for prophylactic protection or other peaceful purposes. It also bans weapons, equipment, or means of delivery designed to use such agents or toxins for hostile purposes or in armed conflict. The actual use of biological weapons is prohibited by the 1925 Geneva Protocol, and Article 8 of the BTWC recognizes that nothing contained in the Convention shall be construed as a derogation from the obligations obtained in the Geneva Protocol. As of November 2001, 162 states had signed the BTWC, and 144 of these have ratified it, and 16 have yet to agree with the disarmament. It has been over 31 years, and still 16 states have yet to have complied with this treaty. Why is this? There needs to be an immediate trade embargo placed on the following countries until they do so: Burundi, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, Gabon, Guyana, Haiti, Liberia, Madagascar, Malawi, Myanmar, Nepal, Somalia, Syrian Arab Republic, United Arab Emirates, and finally the United Republic of Tanzania. The chemical attack that happened in Syria on August 21, 2013, and all possible attacks that may very well happen in the future will not ever have the chance of happening if the rules and regulations regarding these chemical weapons would have been much more strict. The United Nations should have had policy like mine since the beginning of the Geneva Convention in 1949. The time to implement my suggestions is now.